Great panel with us today. We're very excited. We have to have Scott Jennings. He's the co-founder of Run Switch PR and former special assistant to President George W. Bush. We have Chuck Rocha. He is Solidarity Strategies president and a Democratic strategist who was an advisor to Bernie Sanders. And, of course, Matt Schlapp, chairman of the American Conservative Union and co-founder of Cove Strategies. So, Chris, I'm going to kick it to you. The post-debate polls have sort of settled in. Last week, there was a wise man who said this.
I thought you might like to know, how much can you really get out of a first presidential debate? What's the range like? This year looks a lot more like 2012 than it does in 2008. In 2008, the cake was pretty baked at this point. There wasn't much slack in the line. This time, it seems like there's a lot more slack in the line, higher numbers of undecided voters, and a lot more fluidity in the race. So there is more at stake.
So was that wise man on the mark?
He's a handsome devil, I'll tell you that much. That's one thing I know about him. All right, well, let's take a look. What was our poll back from the Fox News poll from September 15th? Let's take a look at that.
That's the last big one.
And that was the last one we did, and our polls are so good and so delicious. There it is. It's a tie, and Donald Trump's up by a point. Okay, so what happened in our post-debate poll? We have the first and best Dana Blanton poll after the debate, and what do we see? Big shift. Grande shift that we have Hillary Clinton goes up 4 points and Trump goes down 2. So I was right.
You were right. Well, let's ask our panel. Scott, do you think that is pretty much reflective of the week?
Yeah, I think the polling shows Hillary had a better week, but you can ask President Kerry and President Romney what it means to win a first presidential debate because they both did it, and so Trump has a chance to come back and change it at the next debate. But clearly, you know, debating the appropriate girth of a Miss Universe or talking about your taxes and tweeting at 3 a.m. are not the kinds of things you want to be doing a month out. So he needs to get back on message and get back to a place at the next debate where he can be the comeback kid. As opposed to losing again. And
that is something that you said last week, Chris, is that whoever won that first debate, it wasn't necessarily determinative of who would win the general election.
Yeah, put that. Show the good people that. We have the Gallup polling from going back to the time before the earth cooled that shows that, guess what? Winning the first debate, about half the time it works, about half the time it doesn't work. Rocha, question. For Hillary Clinton, and she did the little shimmy. Remember when she did the shimmy?
It was good.
I think you should never let them see you shimmy.
Never let them see you shimmy.
Just shimmy inside.
Keep inside voice. Right. For her, I think to Scott's point, isn't there a danger that she gets too cocky? This is somebody who cannot handle a lead. Every time she gets in the lead, she screws up. Is there a danger for her that now the expectations for Trump in the second debate are even lower, and she's being cocky?
You just said that. Could his expectations be any lower? I mean, they were as low as they could have been to begin with. The bottom line is if you love Donald Trump, you still love Donald Trump. True. And if you love Hillary Clinton, you still love her. There's a small sliver of folks that me and you talk about all the time in just a handful of states who she needs to impress. But you're right. And I remind everybody, I did run a primary against her, and sometimes that team can get a little full of themselves, especially when they're kicking. And somebody that's already been kind of making their own way, he's digging, and they just keep throwing him shovels. So I think at the end of the day, when you really look at it,
I think Chuck is a self-identified Mexican redneck and gun rack Democrat.
That's true.
And you mean that in the kindest possible way, self-identified.
West Virginia and East Texas, we have a certain kinship for many years, right?
That's right. We got a Kentucky in here, too, so we're all right.
So I had enjoyed the conversation in the green room. When you start talking about handing somebody a shovel, like she just needs to be quiet and get out of the way. The SNL thing last night, where they went, Miss Clinton, would you? And it was all comedy. Would you like to respond? She's like, nope, I wouldn't. He can just continue to talk.
Actually, that's something. Speaking of the green room conversation, which was amazing, and we wish we could bring it to you.
No, we don't, because we'd get so fired. We would get so fired.
We were talking about how maybe both of them right now they don't need to really do anything. Like, stop spending money, just focus on the debate.
Well, it's a really interesting part. Where you think about Hillary Clinton spending so much money and doing so little good with it, and the fact that Donald Trump is this guy who's supposedly a big wealthy billionaire, we were wondering if he had to actually spend any of that money that he did spend. The fact is that politics is changing, how we get our information is changing, and we have two just huge candidates with massive name ID who've been in our lives for decades and decades and decades,
and with the highest level of negatives that we've ever had in a presidential
And that kind of comes with being around for a long time, too. In Hillary Clinton's case, it comes with the fact that she's been involved in our government for decades, and you wear the battle scars when you do that. Yeah. Also, I have not seen someone as a general election candidate be so wooden and unlikable, and even Chuck's not going to disagree with me. She's tough.
Al Gore.
She does not relate to people.
You act like Al Gore never ran for president.
She might be worse, okay?
Now that is saying something, and you heard it first here on I'll Tell You What. Coming up, a look ahead at the week coming up, including, as Greg Gutfeld calls it, the thriller of vanilla. The VP debate comes to Virginia on Tuesday. We've got our predictions. Stick around.
My microphone is broken. She broke it with Obama. She and Obama stole my microphone. They took it to Kenya.
He hasn't released his tax returns, which means he's either not that rich,
Wrong.
not that charitable,
Wrong.
or he's never paid taxes in his life.
Warmer.
Here's a tip. If you never want to see my face again, elect me president, and I swear to God I will lock myself in the Oval Office and not come out for 4 years. But if you don't elect me, I will continue to run for president until the day I die.
Welcome back to I'll Tell You What. So after a crazy week in the race to the White House, what's next? The Veeps square off on Tuesday, and 1 week from tonight it's round 2 for Clinton and Trump. And we talked initially at the beginning of the show about the news of the weekend, which is the Trump tax return in the New York Times. And Chuck, I want to play for you the soundbite from Giuliani and Chris Christie defending Donald Trump and get your take on it, because I think this is one of the things that will come up in the week ahead. Let's listen to that.
That's why Donald Trump is the person best positioned to fix it. This is a guy who, when lots of businesses went out of business in the early 1990s, he fought and clawed back to build another fortune, to create tens of thousands of more jobs. And this is actually a very, very good story for Donald Trump.
The reality is he's a genius. What he did was he took advantage of something that could save his enterprise, and he did something we admire in America. He came back.
Chuck, is this the ground Democrats would like to fight on?
Yes, it is. Actually, what we teach you in Politics 101, all you folks at home who want to run for office, it's called the pivot. Donald Trump can learn the pivot. When somebody says something, pivot to something that you want. I wouldn't pivot absolutely to genius. You got to sometimes speak truth to power and just say what's on your mind, but also pivot. Pivot to trade. Pivot to 30 years in government. I ran this race before, right? Go to where your strengths were. He won the first half hour of that debate because he was doing wonderful, right?
That's right.
And you go to where the weakness is, and you always pivot back to where you can do the hatchet every time. Me and Matt's run these things. When you're prepping up a candidate, you know where the weakness is. She even threw out what she threw out with Miss Venezuela, and they took the bait, but all of that was planned. Stay where your strengths are. People are sick and tired of being sick and tired in the country. Nobody's motivated to vote. Start talking about jobs and the economy and a lifetime politician. If that's the advice I would give, you can write me a check today, Mr. Trump, if you'd like.
Scott, let's test a thought experiment. So I was saying to Dana earlier, so if Hillary Clinton was a B, B+ in that debate, Trump was only a C or a C-. He didn't flunk. He passed the test. He cleared the hurdle of being a plausible debater and continued to be a plausible candidate for president. So there was good in it for him. What does the world look like today? Today we're at the end, or at the beginning of a new week for Trump, following what maybe was his most difficult week yet. We got the tweet about sex tape. We got the taxes. We got the fight. I mean, if you're fighting with the former Miss Universe, it's not where you want to be. So let's take it the other way. What if Trump had said, well, we had a good debate. We think we won because our message got out there, and then said, and then did what Chuck did and went back and focused on issues like raising tariffs, changing the tax code, stuff like that.
His image in your Fox News poll, interestingly, didn't change, nor did his issue ratings change.
Right.
Her image jumped a little. Where she really scored was on temperament. He was even on temperament from pre and post, but in the post-debate poll, she jumped 16 net points on temperament. So the debate for her, that's where she wanted to win it, and that's where she's been winning this race. For Trump, he could have probably come out of this debate in a lot better shape. Done what you said. And now the challenge is this. When he gets in front of the debate cameras again, can he force himself to not talk about Miss Venezuela? Can he force himself to not dwell on his taxes? Can he force himself to do what Chuck said, which is focus on the issues that matter, trade, jobs, things that matter to people in Ohio and Iowa and other swing states?
He did that in September. He had a pretty good September. I want to talk about one thing that I think is a weakness for Hillary Clinton, and that is concern from the left that she's not really all that left. And we have some sound from her talking about how she's center-left. Let's listen.
I am occupying from the center-left to the center-right, and I don't have much company there.
So, Matt, I want to ask you, does this actually help Republicans? Because if Democrats are unenthusiastic about her, will this actually drive down their voter turnout as well, if they just feel like she's not going to be who we think she is?
Well, the first question is, I looked through the Fox News poll, and I agree with what Scott's saying about it. But in several of the other polls we saw leading up to this first presidential campaign, you actually saw 9 out of 10, up to 9 out of 10 Romney voters lining up with Trump, which is something everyone's been talking about. Boy, that's going to be hard to make happen. And 8 out of 10 Obama voters lining up with Clinton. And everybody's focusing on her problem with millennials. How will she possibly get the same percentage with African Americans and Hispanics? But if you look at ideologically, with these people that are more progressive, more left, and perhaps skewing a little more young, she is just not turning them on.
Is that a concern, Chuck?
I think it would be a huge concern if she wasn't running against Donald Trump. I think she gets a little bit of a leeway with that because of what we saw in the debate. And like I said in the beginning, if you're with Donald Trump, you're going to be with Donald Trump. And I respect that. If you're going to be with her, you're going to be with her. There's a small group of people. We're worried about turnout with Latinos and African Americans being more. We need that to boost it up like it normally is in presidential years. But there's also this suburban, like white women, educated women vote. That's a problem. If he was to just live in that little space in like 3 states I could take him to and to those precincts, you would see a lot more numbers.
From Trump Tower by the end of this show.
I know. It's not that far. This is who you guys will agree.
By the way, I would endorse them calling him.
Yeah, exactly. I know.
I think there's a lot of Sanders people out there that should be calling.
He'd help your guy. Come get me. And this is what, by the way, Democrats have long suspected about Hillary Clinton, that she's a centrist. She's more hawkish than their party, and that she does bipartisan stuff. She has these leaning towards, and she says it there herself in her own words.
I think she kind of knew that, though. Bill Clinton was the same.
Look,
yeah,
what
but
she is,
the Democratic Party is different.
But she tries to pretend.
I would give you that.
Right.
She is a corporate tool. That is what she is. That's what they hate.
Oh, here we go.
On that note,
can we say that on live television?
I meant that in the genteel sense.
Yes, quite so. We've got more with the panel, as I'll tell you what continues. But while we take this short break, here's what you, America, need to do. Go to foxnews.com.
Battleground state of North Carolina. And just in time, because this morning, Chris, the AP issued a story that said, without North Carolina, Trump has no way to become president.
Right.
As if like North Carolina is the new Ohio.
Right. And if we are seeing this as a change election in terms of how the landscape looks, Ohio has a lot of blue-collar white voters. And if blue-collar white voters are shifting over to the Republican Party in a complete way, if that's really what's happening, then Ohio's not going to be a swing state anymore.
So Ohio's in the bag for Republicans?
Right now it looks like it is. Now things can change, and Hillary Clinton isn't going there, and Ohio looks very good for Trump.
Yeah.
But North Carolina, mwah, I love you, North Carolina, because you are so close. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the national. What's our deal? Last week's halftime report, average of polls stood 47.4 to 43.8. So Hillary Clinton was up more last week. How is it this week? What's the answer? Ta-da! 44 to 42.4. Why is it closer, you wonder? I thought she won the debate. The answer is we don't have enough polling. There's only one poll out, so we don't know. So a week from now, we'll know whether the race has changed. So maybe you should,
deep tease right
maybe
there.
you should tune in next week. All right. Now, what about North Carolina, the Tar Heel state? Real Clear Politics average of polls says that it is tied, essentially. So how do you win in North Carolina? So when we look at North Carolina, we're talking really about all of North Carolina. There are pockets with large African American communities. There's Appalachian North Carolina. There's all of this stuff. But we're really talking about Wake County, and we're talking about Mecklenburg County. So Wake County, of course, we know about because that's where the state capital is. And even though it's the second largest county, it happens to be the county where you get the most votes. So this is the most important one. It's one of the 20 fastest growing counties in the nation. It's the state capital. It's the Research Triangle. High median income, almost $67,000. And it is quite white, especially for a southern state, 69% white, 21% black, 10% Hispanic. And Obama won 55% in 2012. He outperformed what a Democrat ought to do in what's really the breadbasket of Republican votes. Now let's look south. Let's look at Mecklenburg. That is, of course, Charlotte and environs. This is the most populous county in North Carolina. It's had an economic slowdown after the banking boom went bust. Median income there, $56,000, $10,000 less. No bueno. 59% white, 32% black, 13% Hispanic. Much more diverse, much more African American. And Obama won 61% in 2012. So why do we care about that? We care about those two counties. Not that the Republicans are going to win either of those counties necessarily, but they got to keep it close. They've got to get close to a tie in Wake County. And what Trump has to do is he has to hold her at a reasonable place. So let's go back and let's look Go back. We pull up that other graphic that shows us how Romney and Obama did in North Carolina, because the Romney-Obama comparison is our chalk. This is our framework. So you see, tied with women, Romney wins clearly with men. We have white voters, overwhelmingly 68% for Romney, and then we have 96% of black voters for Obama. But this is key in a state that is young, growing, and with a lot of schools in it. 50%, 50-50, 49-50 on voters with college degrees. So let's take a look at the most recent Fox News poll for North Carolina. How are these demographic groups going? Aha! Would you have believed that it is a tie among women? You would not have believed it.
But it is.
But it is. Would you believe that Donald Trump is way up with dudes?
Yes.
Way up with dudes. Yes, you would have believed that. White voters? How about Donald Trump underperforming Mitt Romney's numbers substantially with white voters in North Carolina? And how about black voters? Hillary Clinton doing much worse with black voters than Barack Obama did. So they're sort of hanging out there. And then here's the money. Here's the payoff. Voters with college degrees, 41% for Trump, 44% for Clinton. What does that tell us? A lot of educated people, and by the way, high correlation between your education level and affluence, generally speaking, when we're looking at these numbers. They're sitting out. They're waiting. They're waiting. All of these suburbanites. When you look, I mean, if you drive through North Carolina and you're up in the Research Triangle and you drive through Charlotte, all of these subdivisions are full of voters that don't know what they want to do.
So they're just going to wait till the second debate? Third debate, or just stay home. Maybe they stay home. I don't know. That's really fascinating.
Did you find it fascinating?
I thought it was great. What did you think, Scott?
Well, it's also interesting. People are voting in North Carolina right now.
Yeah.
You can vote already in the states that has early voting, and so these news events, as they hit, you know, if you get mad about taxes, you can go up and vote tomorrow. If you get mad about something that's said in debate, you can get up and vote the next day, so you don't have to wait and see if things change your mind. I think composition of the electorate here is also important. If Hillary Clinton overwhelmingly wins by 90 points with African Americans, that's great. But what percentage of the electorate did they make up? That's where Obama did damage in 2012. In Ohio, for instance, he changed the electorate from what it had been previously. So composition of the electorate and enthusiasm among demographic groups, I think, is what's plaguing the Clinton campaign right now.
Let me jump in here, Dana. In the Bush years, we really always worried about North Carolina. It was the state that we just saw because of what was happening to the tobacco industry, what was happening to manufacturing, and what was happening to textiles. And it was a real triple whammy. And we really always worried that it was wobbly, because how are we going to reach out to that more blue-collar, more rural voter? We knew we'd do it on values, but could we do it on our economic message, which we had trouble with? That's what's interesting about a state like North Carolina. Trump will actually have traction with those voters who have been pretty mad at the Republican Party for a long time.
You know who always reminded us of that at the White House was Jeannie Mamo.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You'd be good to know that over the last 10 years, the Latino population in this state has grown over 212%. And so we've been down there, my firm, doing work registering new Latinos. The average age of Latinos across the nation is 27. It's 2 years younger than that in North Carolina. So they did not grow up in the Clinton age. They don't really know Trump more than just what they know about online. So we've been down there, you know, doing education, doing voter registration, because Democrats know, we know that we have to have a turnout problem. We know we have to have bigger numbers. So there's been an investment made to do that piece. But let's not forget the military installments down there.
Absolutely. Stealing my line. Yes, exactly.
You know, I work with Vote Vets. They're a great organization. They do a ton of work down in North Carolina. And this is a key voting block. And this is a key voting block in this and the Senate race.
Fort Bragg is huge.
That's right.
Huge. And they also have Parris Island. The number of military voters. And Obama won in 2008 with military voters, and then Romney took them back in 2012.
And they're already voting now, too.
But the Senate race is the incumbent Senator Richard Burr still
He's fine.
Winning.
And their governor.
Okay.
Right. So we did a bunch of Spanish language ads down there 2 weeks ago for an organization, and we did a bunch of polling before and afterwards that I can't talk about because it's private polling. Wouldn't y'all like to know? But anyway, it was really different between the Spanish-speaking and the English-speaking Latino population.
Let's
just say that the English-speaking population looks a lot more like the regular average Joe down there than the Spanish-speaking.
But Trump's going to win the state, and Richard Burr's coming back to the Senate.
So saith the Schlapp.
All right, coming up, it's the return of the news quiz. Don't go anywhere. We are back in exactly 220 seconds.
The patented, never improved upon, I'll tell you what news quiz. The first question goes to you, Scott.
Okay.
On Tuesday, Vice presidential nominees Tim Kaine and Mike Pence will face off in their only debate. And they both have been prepping hard Who is standing in for Tim Kaine in Mike Pence's preparations? A, no one. Pence is using software built to replicate likely Kaine responses. B, don't laugh, Schlapp. B, Virginia Republican Congressman Robert Hurt, who served with Kaine in Richmond and knows his likely responses. C, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker. Or D, an amiable sea otter.
I will go with B. Although I think a computer would be good.
You think B, Robert Hurt, Congressman Robert Hurt?
That's what I'll go with.
The correct answer is Scott Walker.
Scott Walker.
From Wisconsin. Right. Ooh, tough. I thought you'd get that.
Yeah. All right, I got the second question for Chuck. After Libertarian nominee Gary Johnson got a case of vapor lock when he was asked in an interview to name a world leader he admired, both major party nominees got similar questions and interviews. And somewhat surprisingly, both of them picked the same one. Who was it? A, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. B, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. C, Russian ruler Vladimir Putin. Or D, German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
I put on my glasses so I at least like to look a little bit smarter.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with Merkel in Germany.
Yes, very good, very good.
I watch a lot of TV.
All right, up next, question 3 goes to Matt Schlapp. This weekend's Ryder Cup golf tournament between the USA and Europe at Hazeltine Golf Club in Minnesota has been pretty ugly. Fans were ejected for heckling, and one British golfer had to apologize for his brother, calling American fans pudgy, basement-dwelling irritants stuffed on cookie dough. Quite. But there has been kindness and grace, too, as golfers have memorialized the late Arnold Palmer, who died last Sunday. Question. Palmer dropped out of Wake Forest University, where he was on a golf scholarship, halfway through his senior year in 1951. Why? Was it to A, go pro, B, get married, C, join the Coast Guard, or D, because he flunked out?
Military.
Correct. He did. He served 3 years.
No hesitation.
Because he knows.
I did this in high school. I know.
And he also knows that Arnold Palmer was a stone cold dude. He was great guy. I got to meet him, and he was a really wonderful human being.
Everyone says so.
Just really the best. And he went. His roommate killed himself, and he basically was like, what am I doing here? What's it all for? Drops out of college and goes and joins the Coast Guard and spends 3 years in the Coast Guard. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. Well, we do have news coming up this week. So you have the vice presidential debate. Here's my thinking, Chuck. Tell me if you think I'm right. So usually, and I heard Kim Strauss of the Wall Street Journal editorial report say this yesterday. I thought it was exactly right. The vice presidential candidate is usually the attack dog. Cheney was a very good one for President George W. Bush. But in this case, you have the two candidates at the top are the attack dogs. And then you have the nice guys, Tim and Kaine. So can either of them, can Kaine improve Clinton's likability, and could Pence improve Trump's temperament issues?
They are betting the farm on it in Farmville, Virginia, coming up on Tuesday. I think that it's going to be interesting to see. We've never really a dichotomy like this, if I can use such a big word on this show, where you have such two nice fellas, right? You have the stalwart of the conservative movement, who even used to have a conservative radio program, and then the best white dude we can put up for the Democrats, who actually was a Jesuit priest at some point, right? Like, you have two really good if these two people were on the top of the ticket, it would be different deals.
Seminary.
He wasn't a priest. No. Oh, he was just a missionary.
No, but we get
in Texas, it's the same thing. In Texas, it's the same thing.
6 weeks and you get a
lot of work to do. They've got the hardest wingman job in entertainment. Let me tell you that. But they're both good at what they do, and both sides of the party, the Republicans and Democrats, love each one of these nominees, and both wish probably a little bit that they were both on the top of the ticket for the most part. It would be a lot different election. So their job is tough, but they're going to be trying to be a really good wingman.
Now, some people think it's going to be boring, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be a good one.
I think it's going to be a little bit boring.
You want it to be boring if you're for Trump?
Yes. I think Mike Pence, you know what his job is on Tuesday? It's to remind conservatives, as we've been talking around this table, that the right vote
for the base.
is to pull it for Trump-Pence. And they want to be reminded that that ticket is Trump-Pence. Pence, who has a 99% ACU lifetime record. Tim Kaine, the lowest in history, a 0.
A 0? Interesting.
But Tim Kaine can speak Spanish. Anyway, but go ahead.
Vice presidential debate is like a halftime show of a college basketball game. They pick two folks to come down from the crowd. They shoot baskets for 30 seconds. We cheer, and then it becomes irrelevant once the game starts again.
Don't tell them that.
This is a time filler. At no time in human history has the
Don't tell them that. It's going to be.
But we're going to be live on television, so you're going to want to watch it. All right, as we head into the break, if you've heard our podcast, you know that we ask our viewers, where you find America. This week, Dan DeBline from Arizona Arizona wrote, "I find America within the hearts of our heroic citizens who don't receive media attention. My wife who works in cancer research, a young man helping an elderly woman onto a curb, our first responders. This is the real America." Well said, Dan. When we return, can I stump the Star Wall with 2 vice presidential related presidential trivia questions? We'll be right back. And interviews. And somewhat surprisingly, both of them picked the same one. Who was it? A, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. B, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. C, Russian ruler Vladimir Putin. Or D, German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
I put on my glasses so I at least like to look a little bit smarter.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with Merkel in Germany.
Yes, very good, very good.
I watch a lot of TV.
All right, up next, question 3 goes to Matt Schlapp. This weekend's Ryder Cup golf tournament between the USA and Europe at Hazeltine Golf Club in Minnesota has been pretty ugly. Fans were ejected for heckling, and one British golfer had to apologize for his brother, calling American fans pudgy, basement-dwelling irritants stuffed on cookie dough. Quite. But there has been kindness and grace, too, as golfers have memorialized the late Arnold Palmer, who died last Sunday. Question. Palmer dropped out of Wake Forest University, where he was on a golf scholarship, halfway through his senior year in 1951. Why? Was it to A, go pro, B, get married, C, join the Coast Guard, or D, because he flunked out?
Military.
Correct. He did. He served 3 years.
No hesitation.
Because he knows.
I did this in high school. I know.
And he also knows that Arnold Palmer was a stone cold dude. He was a great guy. I got to meet him, and he was a really wonderful human being.
Everyone says so.
Just really the best. And he went. His roommate killed himself, and he basically was like, what am I doing here? What's it all for? Drops out of college and goes and joins the Coast Guard and spends 3 years in the Coast Guard. Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. Well, we do have news coming up this week. So you have the vice presidential debate. Here's my thinking, Chuck. Tell me if you think I'm right. So usually, and I heard Kim Strauss of the Wall Street Journal editorial report say this yesterday. I thought it was exactly right. The vice presidential candidate is usually the attack dog. Cheney was a very good one for President George W. Bush. But in this case, you have the 2 candidates at the top are the attack dogs. And then you have the nice guys, Tim and Kaine. So can either of them, can Kaine improve Clinton's likability, and could Pence improve Trump's temperament issues?
They are betting the farm on it in Farmville, Virginia, coming up on Tuesday. I think that it's going to be interesting to see. We've never really a dichotomy like this, if I can use such a big word on this show, where you have such 2 nice fellas, right? You have the stalwart of the conservative movement, who even used to have a conservative radio program, and then the best white dude we can put up for the Democrats, who actually was a Jesuit priest at some point, right? Like, you have 2 really good qualities. If these 2 people were on the top of the ticket, it would be different deals.
Seminary.
He wasn't a priest. No. Oh, he was just a missionary.
We get
in
Texas, it's the same thing. In Texas, it's the same thing.
6 weeks and
they've got a lot of work to do. They've got the hardest wingman job in entertainment. Let me tell you that. But they're both good at what they do, and both sides of the party, the Republicans and Democrats, love each one of these nominees, and both wish probably a little bit that they were both on the top of the ticket for the most part. It would be a lot different election. So their job is tough, but they're going to be trying to be a really good wingman.
Now, some people think it's going to be boring, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be a good one.
I think it's going to be a little bit boring.
You want it to be boring if you're for Trump?
Yes. I think Mike Pence, you know what his job is on Tuesday? It's to remind conservatives, as we've been talking around this table, that the right vote is to pull it for Trump-Pence. And they want to be reminded that that ticket is Trump-Pence. Pence, who has a 99% ACU lifetime record. Tim Kaine, the lowest in history, a 0.
A 0? Interesting.
But Tim Kaine can speak Spanish. Anyway, but go ahead.
Vice presidential debate is like a halftime show of a college basketball game. They pick 2 folks to come down from the crowd. They shoot baskets for 30 seconds. We cheer, and then it becomes irrelevant once the game starts again.
Don't tell them that.
This is a time filler. At no time in human history has
Don't tell them that. It's going to be
But we're going to be live on television, so you're going to want to watch it. All right, as we head into the break, if you've heard our podcast, you know that we ask our viewers where you find America. This week, Dan DeBline from Arizona wrote, I find America within the hearts of our heroic citizens who don't receive media attention. My wife who works in cancer research, a young man helping an elderly woman onto a curb, our first responders. This is the real America. Well said, Dan. When we return, can I stump the Star Wall with 2 vice presidential related presidential trivia questions? We'll be right back.